This is the Bootstrapper Show for Property Management, powered by Anaquim, a podcast where we have real conversations with industry experts that you can apply to your life and business. Welcome to Bootstrappers, where we talk about topics that are relevant to property management entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Jeremy Aspen, along with my spouse, Gwen.
Bootstrappers is powered by Anaquim. Go to anaquim.net right now and download an ebook on leadership development. Leadership development is super hard for small businesses, but we have a plan on how to do it well on a budget. Go to anaquim.net now, go to the book section, download your leadership development manual today.
Today, we're going to talk about creating a company culture that will make it so that your clients love you. In our conversation with Lisa Wise, we're going to discuss company culture, defining company culture, kindness and how to incorporate it into your company. And also, we're going to talk about paying rent for use of the planet.
Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you are the CEO of Flock DC, which is basically a family of real estate companies. Can you tell us more about yourself and your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the chief flockster, which means I'm the lady in charge, or the boss lady, as lots of folks like to call me from the office.
Chief flockster so much.
And we are a real estate management company, a number of birds of one kind. You'll notice we have a lot of bird-related language that we use in branding, which we really enjoy. And if you like one bird, you might as well like all the birds. So we really went in on the flight metaphors. And so we manage about $2 billion in real estate in Washington, D.C. proper, which means we only manage right now property in Washington, D.C. itself. So we have a focus on urban property management, which has its own unique challenges and is a great experience for us. We have about 70 team members, and we are, I think, probably one of the largest management companies in the D.C. area. And it's great to be here. And we are very happy to be working with Anaquim on our remote professional workforce, which has been fantastic for us.
Well, great. Well, you know, the reason we're having you on the show is because you've spoken at numerous conferences, and I've heard you and been inspired by you on the subject of company culture. So I'm just curious, how do you frame company culture? Like, what is your mission, your values, your vision with that?
Culture is something that is three-dimensional, and it's not a checklist item. So it's basically what happens when the boss leaves the room. It's what you don't always account for. It's not always measurable. It's a feeling. It's part of the fabric of the organization, but it's intended to really motivate people to bring their best self. And it motivates the company to treat people as if they're bringing their best selves. We are a mission-based organization with a vision, and we believe that it's important to put people and place above profit. And we believe that when you do that, you'll likely be more profitable. In other words, we want people to feel like the work that they do each and every day makes a difference. And we think about property management as something that touches people's lives every single day, whether they know it or not. There is someone behind them, a manager, who's responsible for making sure that their experience in that space is a good one. And when you think about our work from a mission perspective, and you invite your team members to understand that everything that they're doing makes the world a better place, provided we're all intentionally asking ourselves how we can do our best possible work, it frames the idea of culture very clearly. And it gives people a sense of purpose in their own role in the workplace. And then you fold in things like fun and caring about whole people, and not just their value as an asset, but their contribution as whole human beings. And suddenly you start to see that culture really build on itself, and people wanting to be at work instead of wanting to get done with their work.
Yes.
And something that we do that I think kind of fits into this, which I think maybe you'll appreciate, but I'm curious. We frame Anaquim, our company, as what we want it to be, as an instrument for our employees to use to live the life that they want to live, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't really have a choice. That's what's going to happen. And it just seems like a bit of a shortcut to embrace it and just make sure that what you've got is what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be a partnership. and it has to be relational.
It's a
So,
partnership.
if people have a set of shared interests and objectives, which means you have to see things from other people's perspectives, and that truly means just being empathic, not only as a company but as individuals when we come to work, empathic toward our community and toward our residents as well.
So when you were founding the Flock group of real estate companies, did you know from the beginning that you were starting a company that was mission driven, or did this kind of evolve over time?
100%, I knew out of the gate this would be a mission driven company. I have a nonprofit background. I spent 15 years managing nonprofits. And really, my origin story is about being a purpose driven person. I lived in 23 different spaces before I went to college across 5 different states.
Wow.
And the housing insecurity that I experienced growing up really informed my sense of wanting to be in a professional space that made a contribution. And I really wanted to work in justice-oriented missions. So healthcare and the environment were the 2 topics that I spent the most time working on professionally, and found my way to management and to managing real estate as sort of a side hustle, to be honest. And that eventually kind of eclipsed my day jobs and became my entire professional focus and really a huge part of my identity. And it then made perfect sense, of course, that I would infuse all of the values that I learned from in operating in a nonprofit environment and bringing some of that magic into a for-profit space, where I actually decided I could make more of a difference managing property than I was making in the environmental movement, or in some cases even the healthcare movement.
Wow, I love that. And so from the beginning, you had this vision. Did you already have the skills to manage teams at that point? Or, because as you said, culture's 3D. I love that, because we can talk all day about mission, vision, values, but there's so much more to how that appropriates itself or shows up in the day-to-day. So that day-to-day thing, were you good at that from the beginning, or did you kind of have to struggle through to make the culture strong when you were coming up with your business or just starting?
I think I'd come to the work with a fairly decent sense of how to manage teams, but I hadn't managed teams dealing with so much drama. So property management is very drama driven, and you have to be sort of level headed as you manage that drama. And, I can offer this. I don't get into anything really knowing what I'm doing. So I have a lot more fun throwing the instructions away and just getting started and hoping for the best, and knowing that if I have passion and I have good intention and I have mission, then I'll find myself on the right side of the equation. And that's been true for this work. And it's also been, what I think has been attractive in terms of building a culture that people want to work within and for. And so we have enjoyed a lot of longevity among our senior team members in particular. So our Flock leadership team, which is 7 people strong, most of the folks on that team started as assistants and have grown up and into very senior roles where they're C-level executives now and can offer very sophisticated skill sets. But with me, they found an iterative way to get into the business and to learn completely new work styles and approaches to creating systems that help us do our best possible work and be the best possible management company we could be. And being the best possible management company, we have to be the best possible workplace. And those are completely intertwined. And so, yes, I had some experience. I'm still learning, I'm still making mistakes, and I'm still really comfortable with that.
So when we talk about the dimension of culture, so we have the vision, mission, values, but then there's that day-to-day stuff. Like there's giving feedback to people and how we do that. There's the meeting cadence. There's holding people accountable. There's a directness to each culture of like how direct is the communication style. Can you kind of speak to some of those, how you do things and how that relates to your culture?
Sure. We've had to establish a lot more formality as we've grown. So there's the kind of fly by the seat of your pants approach we got to enjoy early on. is not available to us. So people have asked, how did you organize the work when you first started? And I said, well, whoever answered the phone or saw the email first was in charge of whatever was going on with that phone call or that email. And that works just fine when you have a handful of properties and a handful of team members. But as the work builds on itself and you start to become more established and you have more clients and accountability, then you need to increase structure, and you need to, also increase benefits, and you need to sort of think about what it means to be a workplace where people come to work knowing that they're entitled to a certain level of feedback and formality and benefits and pay and all those things that I think create legitimacy and keep people seated and happy and engaged in their work. And so, our HR work has become more and more pronounced and robust, and we've not shied away from spending money on what we might call back of the house team members. And those team members look at our staff as their client base. And so, we've staffed our people ops is what we call that team. And, we continue to invest in that team so that they're able to support meeting cadence and culture cadence and trainings and something that we call Flock University, where people are constantly being reminded of how we operate, why we operate the way that we do, what it means to engage with our client and resident base, how we position ourselves as a community-oriented company. We've got a very intentional cadence of one-on-one meetings. You have an expectation that you'll be meeting with your supervisor directly each week in a one-on-one format, week after week.
How long are those meetings? Like a half hour?
Typically they're 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll do director level meetings, and then we'll do manager level meetings. We've rolled out the traction model, which I know is popular among a lot of property management companies. I'm finding this popular among a lot of different companies. I'm a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, and Traction is quite popular in that network
EO?
as well.
Yeah, we're an EO as well.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we have created as much structure around how we run meetings as possible so that, when you come to the table that you're going to be productive. And exactly what you can expect of your teammates, and exactly what you can expect of your supervisor, which I think enhances accountability overall. And when there's accountability, then you can rest assured that like what it is that your company's working to deliver, you can count on that. And I think that also creates a fair accountability that we have on behalf of our client base as well. And so, we've gotten, like I said, more and more formal over the years, which I don't tend to be a very formal person. So a little bit of that is counterintuitive, but I can offer that what I want and how I work is not necessarily relevant to how the business and the company needs to run. And so I look to and count on and completely trust my senior management team when they say we have to have weekly meetings. And they have to be really formulaic. That's what we do.
When you say formal, does it also mean that you adhere or use policies, procedures, and processes pretty routinely?
We do, and we have a really formal culture book. We have a wiki site where basically all of the Flock collateral and all of those policies and procedures, from boilerplate to templates to slide decks to what are the corporate Pantone colors, all of that is in a wiki. So we're constantly referring back to what is the bolus of both cultural and corporate collateral that we draw from to make sure that we're really consistent in the way that we do our work.
So, because you are consistent in a way that I think is not typical in the property management realm in terms of your branding and marketing. It seems very intentional. It's very beautiful. I mean, I'm in awe of it, to be perfectly honest. But that seems like it is just indicative of how you run the business, with just you're very clear on what your mission is, what your culture is, and everything kind of goes from that point all the way through your marketing. So can you speak, because marketing is something that a lot of people care about, but how that is intertwined with your culture?
Yeah. It's interesting, like who finds property management companies attractive? Pretty much nobody.
Right.
So, I mean, one of the things that we did when we decided to create a brand at the most granular level, like what is our logo going to be? And so we just sort of did a survey of, well, what other property management companies' logos look like? We'll do the opposite. So like with every decision we make about managing and running our company or designing our company or whatever it is, we look at what the industry does, and then we do everything the opposite way.
So is there an industry that you think is a good inspiration for you that
sales does a really good job. So if you're looking at real estate sales, and a lot of management companies will also do sales and vice versa. We don't do sales. But if you're good at sales and you're sophisticated, then what you're doing is you're inviting people to creatively visualize themselves in the space that you're selling. Property management companies don't take the time to always do that. And so we started with that being kind of the secret sauce around how we market not only ourselves, but the properties that we manage. I've noticed a lot of property management companies don't even market the properties in their web ecosystem. And that's a missed opportunity.
Oof.
So we decided to use our website to showcase properties that people wanted to creatively visualize themselves in. So from the very start, we spent a lot of money on professional photographs. And with a lot of protocols around things like, if the toilet seat's up, start over. Like, make sure the blinds are up, make sure that the bed is made, make sure that there's not pet food out on the counter. Like, do everything you possibly can to style that space in such a way that anybody that looks at it is going to want to see themselves in that space. And management just hasn't taken the time to do that. And I think it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it always feels a lot like property management companies are always a little bit behind the 8 ball. And that's kind of what we're trying to change with this this show and even our own company. It is an industry that can be professionalized, but there's a large percent of even still companies that aren't quite there yet. And I'll tell you, once you get into a more of a professional environment and you kind of have that expectation of yourself, everything ends up being way easier. So, and actually I can segue that into a question. When it comes to your culture, how does that determine or help you determine who you will do business with in terms of your client base? Do you have a selection process that might just be like, nope, not a fit?
Yeah. Well, they have to be willing to maintain their spaces to a highest possible standard, right? So like, we're not taking property that isn't well maintained, and we're not taking property that won't show well. And we're not taking property from an investor that's not interested in making sure that it stays in good repair. So we're very, very selective about the kind of properties that we'll manage in our portfolio. And that alone not only helps us differentiate ourselves as a company that showcases exceptional property, but it also reduces things like conflict with owners who don't want to spend the money. It reduces evictions. I mean, we've had a handful of evictions over the last 13 years and for very good reason. So late payment, like all the things that sort of tend to plague the industry, we've been able to really avoid because of the way that we've selective.
And there is a little bit of a trap in this, right? Because especially when you're a smaller property management company trying to come to your own and thrive, there are always going to be opportunities for you to take on clients that may not have even good intentions. So one time, this is years ago, we had a client that had somewhere in the neighborhood of about 100 houses in it's North Omaha, and that's kind of it's not the better part of town, put it that way. And so we were having a meeting with them, and one of our questions was, "What's your objective for it?" And he goes, "Well, it's just a cash flow." Okay, well, let's drill down on that a little bit. What he really wanted to do was only cash flow. His objective was to bring as much cash out of the building as he could, and the exit plan was to leave the parcel with the city for them to demolish it. So that is a type of client that while it might look like with 100 units at 10% management fee, you might be able to make some money on it. But man, the damage you'll do to your reputation, the work that you will put into it, the news coverage that you're ultimately going to have to be involved in is not going to pay off. And it's unethical. It's evil. There's that part of it too. But those
when you're
opportunities
just
are going to
starting,
come up.
when you're just
starting, you're going to want to do
support
it.
your family and you're starting a new business, it's easy to compromise your value.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, when you were in that stage of your business where you're just starting out and money was maybe tighter than you'd like, how did you maintain the resolve to stick with your vision and stick with your culture when it would have been easy to take a compromising property, for example?
Yeah, that's an easy answer. I worked a whole full-time job for 4 years on top of running this company.
Yep.
So you just made it so that you you financed your startup in a way that you could be choosy because that's the way you wanted to run your company.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's important for people to know. I mean, that's because people do compromise their values, especially when finances are tight, and then they take on a client or a property that doesn't align with their values. And that's when people get into trouble, and then you're kind of chasing your tail with your reputation and all that kinds of I think that happens a lot in the industry.
Yeah. Well, and let's be honest. I mean, I've certainly had some properties that we think, oh, that probably wasn't a good fit. And like, so there must have been enough of it that seemed like it was aligned that we were willing to say, okay. And then, when we reflect back, but, every year we cull our list of clients and say, is there anybody that we really need to invite to leave? And we're very comfortable parting ways with clients that don't share our values.
So what about, do you listen to your team if there's like an abusive owner? I mean,
that's just to fire them without even bringing it up to anybody.
Okay.
That's non-negotiable. If somebody's being abusive to our team, then they can't stay in the portfolio, full stop.
And you let them know that ahead of time? Because some people.
It's in the contract.
Okay.
So we have a clause in the contract that if they're being abusive, then it's cause for immediate termination. It's even more granular. We'll say if you use, swear language or other threatening language in any kind of correspondence, then that's cause for immediate termination. And I'm very comfortable exercising that clause.
Right. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, I'm always going to put my staff first because they're the ones that need to deliver the service. So if you don't take care of them, then they're not going to take good care of your clients. And so that's the order of priority. And I can tell you, if you want to talk about building culture, when you are empowering your staff to fire clients because they're not being appropriate, they're not aligned with us, they're not being respectful, that's definitely a vote in favor of the people in the room versus those that are writing checks, and it's a game changer for us. I think it's really morale building,
and it creates loyalty with your
Yes,
staff.
100%.
And
Yes.
okay, so that's one takeaway. What would you say is if you're talking to a property management company and you can identify that maybe they don't have a really strong culture, what's the one or two easiest takeaways for somebody to course correct and finally ultimately have a nice culture, a great culture?
Well, paying them well, pay above market is the first one. Pay people what they're worth. Don't take home all the profits and keep them to yourself. Share them. Reward your talent. They need to make a living. They should be living comfortably if they're working hard for you. Don't make your money by underpaying people.
Right. It doesn't work. It's hard to do that.
I do want to go back to one thing. You said that you had a training, what did you call it? Flock University?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so retraining people, that's always like people in property management will spend the first few weeks training somebody, but then they're like, oh, you're trained. We're done with that. It sounds like you have ongoing training. Are there certain classes that you make them take every year, or how does the ongoing training work? And what does training look like at Flock?
Well, it's changed a bit during the pandemic, obviously. And so this is one of the pandemic perks that we've experienced, is that we're able to record a lot of the sort of Zoom trainings and things and have people sign off on that. And so we don't have to represent things, right? It depends on how interactive those trainings are. We do full day quarterly retreats. And so training is always baked into that. Sometimes it's training around core values. We'll sit around and ask ourselves, like, where do we need refreshers? There's always an annual customer service training. We make people sign a customer service training, like a contract, basically, on how responsive they'll be. Like, we won't let people send out emails unless they have salutations. This is how you start an email. Like, it's so specific because some people things come very naturally. And for other people, they need a sort of a little bit of a guidebook on how it is that we want to make sure that we have absolute continuity across all team members around how we interface with our client base. And making sure that we have those refreshers is really important, and having commitments from folks, so that we'll continue those. We also have a lot of just sort of HR trainings that we'll go through, from a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion work to, the critical and necessary things like sexual harassment trainings and things like that. And so those, we actually, from an HR perspective, do have them sign off on at certain intervals. But we do, again, we do have the quarterly staff retreats that give people an opportunity to.
Is that everybody else? Everybody's involved in those?
Typically, yes. And then, we rethink everything every quarter, right? One of the things that I can offer about our company, for as consistent as we are, we're also super flexible. So if something's not working, we just stop doing that thing. So if you find that convening a huge staff is no longer efficient, and that it's actually not in everybody's best interest, then we'll just stop doing that. So we'll probably break people down into departments and divisions.
That makes me think of something. So how do you identify, or what is the mechanism that is deployed to notify leadership that something isn't working, right? So, because, some people, you go back and you look at somebody doing their job after, and you start to see things that they're doing that look nonsensical, and yet they do it every single
or it's
time.
Different than how you train them, because it evolved, and then you look at it again and you're like, wait, this isn't what we intended.
Or sometimes worst case scenarios is that dumb thing is somehow infused into a procedure that somebody, they added the dumb thing into a procedure, so it's codified, it's what they're supposed to do. But so how do you tease that out of the departments or the employees so that it can come to a position where it's being talked about?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, we have the one-on-ones every week. So there's a lot of accountability there. The traction model actually gives us an opportunity, by tracking data and metrics, to say, is there a dip here? Is there something not going well that should be? So there are indicators that we build into our sort of weekly check-ins that give us a chance to say, something's off. We do a lot of spot auditing. So we will come up with basically a random list of clients that we'll call and say, how's your experience? How are you doing? We send client surveys out, and we ask very specific questions on how their interface with our team members has gone. We ask for names. We also survey our staff. We do staff surveys quite often, and we'll ask our team members, what is working and not working, and where can we be more efficient, and where is there confusion? So there are a lot of checkpoints where we stop and pause and say, we need feedback, and we need as much feedback as possible so that we know that we're doing our best work.
Is that a quality control department? Is it somebody's job just to do quality control?
It's everybody's job. Mm-hmm. So I would say that there's a percentage of each person's job that is about making sure that there's kind of quality control. But the mandate and how we operationalize that usually comes from our leadership team.
So I did want to go back to your training, because people really struggle with training in property management companies.
Mostly because they don't do it.
But did you create all of that training yourself, or did your organization create it, or did you rely on an outside source for some of it?
With the exception of kind of the compliance HR related trainings, which we do have a firm that produces those, everything else we produce in-house. We do all of our branding, websites, photography, everything is in-house. And that's kind of the way we like it. We even have in-house general counsel. So the more we can kind of control our environment and how we manage and produce either content, services, whatever it looks like, the better, because we are so specific about the way that we structure our work and our culture and branding and vision and marketing and all of it, right? So we're also fortunate enough that we have a couple of people that come from a teaching background, more than a couple. And the president of our company, Grace Langham, is a former second grade teacher, and nobody enjoys putting together trainings than she does. So she loves building trainings. So, they're always really interactive, engaging. They're different every time. Lots of group exercises, lots of opportunities for people to collaborate, lots of opportunities to create together. And so I think because we've had a lot of people that have that in-house specialty around training and education, we've been able to produce a lot of content pretty easily, that's super robust. And it's been a huge win. I can offer that folks coming to work with us, and that's really sort of the continuing education piece, the Flock University piece, where we keep adding value to the training components. And then we also have the HR onboarding piece, where people understand, like they'll learn about our culture, they'll learn about our team members, they'll learn about, sort of that history of the organization and all of our different protocols and all the different tools that we use. And we have so many tools that we use, right? So that onboarding process, people don't even hit their desk for a week. They're in full training. And I think I've heard great feedback from people saying, like, wow, I've never had an onboarding process like that one. So they feel prepared for the jobs that they're going to do, at least from understanding from a corporate perspective what they need to know.
So I'm going to try and put out a question here. I don't think I'm going out on a limb to presume that you're probably left-leaning politically. And that's not the discussion we want to go with, but there is a general understanding in business that, kind of the model has always been the Industrial Revolution cogs, having employees as cogs, in your production line. So what is it that maybe gave you the courage or the I don't know, faith might be the right word, to enter into a private sector with more of the, social justice kind of approach? What is there literature, or is it just kind of a hunch? And I say that because, for anyone else that's trying to be in the industry, maybe they'll be more comfortable having other sources like you or literature that might help guide them.
Yeah. Well, I just wrote a book about this very thing.
You did?
I did.
Well, we need to promote your book.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, tell us about it.
When the book is published, we can promote it. But the book title is Self-Elected: How to Put People in Place Over Profit and Soar. Because we have to get a bird theme in there, right?
Yep.
And I truly believe that when you do good work, there's more good work. And we've always measured profit, not in dollars, but in the number of good jobs we've created. I believe that investing in community, in your talent, in the world around you, and being very intentional about the kind of change you want to see in the world and contributing to that change as a company uniquely positions your company. It differentiates your company. And people, especially as we are now, our generation Z and millennials, they are not going to outperform their parents. So if your pathway in life has traditionally been, you sort of go after that, the bigger house, the bigger income, bigger and better. And you're like, well, that's not going to happen. I have $200,000 in student loan debt and nobody can afford real estate anymore. So what am I going to look forward to in life in terms of saying, I believe that I've succeeded? And I think people are a lot more interested in aligning their lives with their value system. And I think in terms of how people engage with and want to do business, there are more and more people who say, it matters to me where my dollar's being spent and which companies I'm wanting to associate with and do business with. And that's why we're seeing companies like Tom's and Farm Girl Flowers and Warby Parker and Bombas, and the list goes on of companies that are saying, wait a minute, we have a social justice stake. Patagonia says, their charitable giving, which is unbelievably robust, is just really it's them paying rent for their use of the planet. There's nothing necessarily unique or misaligned in terms of the way that we're doing things. We're saying that shareholder capitalism is outdated, and that stakeholder capitalism is really a better path forward. We are a company that believes in abundance and sharing in our wealth, and that includes sharing within our company, but also outside of our company, and really investing in the future that we want to be part of. And so we are unapologetically political. We are a social justice company. And if people are not interested in doing business with us for that reason, that's completely fine. So that they can elect to do business wherever they'd like, and that is their choice. I also enjoy the luxury of being in an environment in Washington, D.C., where pretty much 9.2 out of 10 people agree with me.
Yeah.
And that actually does a nice thing for my company, right? People in our environment here are pretty motivated to do business with companies like ours. But I also believe that we're able to make a measurable difference in people's lives. And part of that is by, again, creating good jobs with robust wraparound benefits that actually help them achieve wealth and buy homes and take care of their children and pay off their student loans and, have a stake in ownership and all of these things that a lot of people don't feel will be part of their future. We want to help them get there.
So that's super inspiring to me. I love it so much because at Anaquim, we have like two missions to provide an amazing service to our clients and to transform labor or work in the emerging markets. And I always tell people, like, why even wake up in the morning if you're not going to do good things and spread positivity? Like, I might as well live on a farm and, just have my can and take care, just live alone. I don't know. There's no point in doing anything else.
And you'll, I think, kind of dovetailing from that, you might appreciate this, but we've recently we've kind of taken on a new approach to how we handle the employees. We've got about 800 employees, and we don't have a customer service department for them in the HR department. We have hired a profile for, we're looking for social workers. So we're hiring social workers to come on board so they can really empathize, you mentioned earlier, with what the employee is going through and kind of in more of an artistic way, address the issue. It can't be a matrix, X and Y equals, give them $12.26. It has to be like, oh, what's going on? And find out, and then kind of use available resources to kind of talk in the same currency that might be useful to them.
We're calling them remote professional advocates.
Yeah.
Because their job is to advocate for the employee on their behalf. So we've taken a note from your book because we've been inspired by you, and we want to also just want to live this way. But if I'm a regular property manager and, maybe I didn't grow up in a space where I don't have a social justice background and I'm just trying to feed my family and I really haven't focused on culture before because we were just trying to, market and make owners happy and we're just focused on the day-to-day. What steps can somebody take to make culture more of a priority in their organization?
I think number one is having empathy for your teams and asking yourself how their jobs feel, what they're like, what would make that job better, what would being associated with your company be, put them in the plus category instead of the minus category. How do you assign value to the work that they're doing, reminding them that the work that they're doing makes a difference, and treating them again like whole humans, not just assets, is a big part of it. It's just acknowledging that there are whole human beings in the room versus folks that need to go run tickets or get back to clients or be resilient when people are cranky, because that's what this business is all about. You have to invest in them as people. And when you start seeing them as whole people, it's a lot easier to figure out what culture is going to actually resonate for them. And culture is different everywhere. And, social justice doesn't need to be a movement. It can just be a matter of saying, hey, we manage communities, and so we should care about our community. It's not actually that complex. It's saying, we want to give back to the community that supports us. And there can be very simple, achievable ways of doing that are both free and also create more visibility. I mean, it's a win-win all the way around when you're doing that.
And just it does kind of roll up to the golden rule, right? I mean, in a way, just treat people like the way that you want to be treated. If you're in their situation, that's kind of a baseline rule. I remember being at a property management conference and years ago, and they had us break into groups and talk about how we could really reward our staff. And I find that we don't have a lot in common with most companies in those settings, right? Like we're just in a different kind of category. And this guy, we're sitting around the table, and this guy said, like, I've figured something out here. What I do is on Fridays, I give the girls who do the filing free Starbucks, and they love it. And then he looked at me and he's like, oh, this lady's not going to go for this at all, right? When he's looking at me, he's just like waiting for me to sort of pounce on him. And I said, well, why are you doing filing? You're right. Why in the hell are you filing anything?
Yeah. So
much less enough filing that someone needs a cup of coffee
Right, exactly.
Shit.
So, or a whole day set aside. I was like, let's drill into the real problem here, which is that you're having people file. So you have other concerns than culture and morale. But I think one of the things that can be tricky about property management is that, you're asking people to do tasks sometimes in the hardest possible ways or in inefficient ways. I mean, you need to streamline the work and make it doable and achievable, and like people can be successful. I find that property management, because in order to grow and be successful, you're just layering more work on work on work on work on work, and you're not always finding efficiency unless you stop and say there has to be a better way of economizing and creating streamlined systems. Then I'm just going to burn people out, and they're not going to like the work because the work's not getting done well. So if you commit yourself organizationally to doing the best work in the most efficient possible way, then you're going to always lose people. So, it's two parts. You have to work the culture, but you also have to work the company and make sure that it does things as well as possible. And one of our mantras around the office is, if there's a better, faster, smarter way of doing things, by all means, start doing it that way, not the old way.
Right.
That
is not easy for people to do.
It takes a lot of time. You have to sit down and break your company and then put it back together in a better way. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of intentionality. And we do it all the time.
And whenever someone answers the question I ask, because that's how we've always done it, I always think it's a joke. Like, it's like a caricature. You can't, any employee that's listening right now, don't ever say that, because that's the way we do it. That's a terrible answer. It drives me crazy. It happened last week to me. I was like, oh, really? So yeah, don't do that. Right. Anyway.
Well, Lisa, it is so lovely to have you on the show. As always, of course, we have to have you back when your book is on the market. I cannot wait to read it. It's super exciting. And
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to talk to you about culture, because as we're all starting to think about 2022, this is a moment in time where people can really transform what their company feels like to work in and feels like to work with. And, you can start out fresh. So thanks again for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Bootstrappers is powered by Anaquim. Go to anaquim.net today and download a free ebook on leadership development. A players only want to work at companies that invest in them. This manual tells you how to, on a budget, train and develop your employees. Go to anaquim.net today and download your leadership development manual, and I guarantee you're going to be happy about it.
This is the Bootstrapper Show for Property Management, powered by Anaquim, a podcast where we have real conversations with industry experts that you can apply to your life and business.